Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast hosted by two gentlemen who are so glad you're with us. I am Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my co-host, Moton. Mo's a senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. He covers the entire NFL, also covers the Raiders, specifically columnist there at sportsnot.com as well. You can follow him on X at Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show, of course, is SNB Today. Thanks to our listeners. Make sure, if you don't already listen to us, maybe you're watching us because we are on video. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, X, wherever you're watching us on video, thanks. Subscribe there, by the way, to the video, but also on the audio side, help us out. Make sure you subscribe and rate and review the show and the podcast up from Odyssey. The Odyssey app is a great place to listen to it. Or if you're an Apple Podcast person, Spotify keeps growing for us. Doesn't matter where you listen to us. Just do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review. We're back. Lots of news to talk about. Yes, the Raiders getting ahead of things as we enter the period in between the combine, which was last week, and the draft, which comes towards the end of April. And we'll start with the big news. Mo, I want to get your reaction. Maxx Crosby gets his bag, right? He gets $106 million deal, 3 years on top of his already 2. Then he gets $91 million guaranteed. So the Raiders, I love about this, not only that he's a great player and that they should have wrapped him up. He is the Raiders right now. He is the focal point of the team. He is the franchise. Was the fact that they did this early. You know, there's not going to be this extended period of time where people are going to be sitting, why aren't they giving Maxx Crosby money? Why aren't they doing this? Could they be thinking about trading him? All this jazz that you go through when you don't have certainty. Now, Mo, they have certainty. Maxx Crosby is very, very happy. Obviously, Raider Nation very happy. They love Max. And the Raiders, I think, are showing a little bit about what this front office, what Pete Carroll, what John Spytek are all about. And that's taking care of their own first and getting to business really quick so that you can get on to the task of building a team that can win and perhaps maybe, just maybe, get in the playoffs.
So John Spytek comes from a culture in Tampa Bay where it was all about draft and develop. And I think that this is the first evidence of that. Now, Spytek didn't draft Maxx Crosby, but Maxx Crosby is a homegrown talent for the Raiders. And for me, there was never any doubt that he was going to get paid. I know there were some people who were nervous because they had flashbacks to when the Raiders had a changeover in regime and Khalil Mack was traded before the 2018 season. So some people a bit anxious. They were listening to Max on some of these shows saying, you know, we'll see what happens. He wasn't as confident, at least sounding confident that he would be back. But I didn't worry about it because if you're trying to build a foundation, you're not going to trade the heartbeat of that locker room. It's just not going to happen. Oh, by the way, he's one of the best players in the league, not just at his position, one of the best players in the league. So well-deserved for Maxx Crosby, but also not a surprise. And it was good to see Spytek live, at least for now, in his first big move, live up to that philosophy of draft and develop. Not only draft guys, but keep guys around on second, third, fourth contracts and able to build, again, a foundation for that football team moving forward.
Right. And I think that is so important because you want to set the expectation. You want to set the mood, if you will, of what this team is going to do, what this front office is going to do. Mm-hmm. And by taking care of this, I mean, this is not only the biggest deal for a non-quarterback in NFL history, but he's also sends a sign to the rest of the NFL. I mean, I know a lot of Raider fans out there like to complain about how the national media treats the franchise, and they deserve to be treated as they have because it's been such futile exercise in management of this team over time, over the last 30 years. But this one, if you saw just universally, people, pundits, everybody saying, man, this is a great sign for where this Raider team is going, that they've wrapped up, like as you just called him, the heart and soul of this team, and they can move on. Now, the Raiders also, as we expected, said goodbye to Gardner Minshew. They're going to release him as well. And the quarterback situation, Mo, we talk about this now. We know it's lying season. We try to remind everybody during this time, it's lying season. So we see now every Seattle Seahawk that has ever existed that is either rumored to be on the trade block or has been released is suddenly, is he going to go to the Raiders? So, you know, don't buy into that stuff too much. But the Raiders now have to look at, who are cap casualties elsewhere that could help them. They found one, Alex Kappa from the Bengals, who had a terrible year last year, partly due to some injuries and some other things, who is, I think, a good depth piece at offensive line. A lot of people poo-pooing this signing. And again, I've said it for years and years on this show. In the NFL, yes, you got to improve your frontline starters, but you also have to have depth. Alex Kappa is a good depth guy. So let's not get ahead of our skis on calling it a bad signing. I think this shows that John Spytek looks around the league and says, hey, is there somebody out there looking for a second chance, looking for an opportunity, who was a cap casualty that can come in and give us some depth and experience on this offensive line?
See, now you're in Cincinnati, so you have close insight on this one. But I 100% agree with you. Scott, I didn't understand the talk about this as if it was the end of the world. I got on the X on Wednesday, and people were talking about this like they damn near wanted to cancel the season because they signed a depth piece for the offensive line on a 2-year, $11 million deal. By the way, it's $5.5 million guaranteed. That is the real money. Right. So he's averaging $2.75 million guaranteed on a 2-year deal. If he's cut before week 1, no one's going to even remember it. You're not going to miss that $5.5 million when you had $96.5 million in cap space coming into free agency anyway. So to sign a guy, a depth piece at that price range is fine with me. And you said it. I saw the graphic being passed around that he allowed the most pressures, the most sacks, and this, that, and third. His pass protection was poor. We're not disputing that. But his first 2 years in Cincinnati, he was a decent starter. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay, decent starter. That's how Tom Brady's familiar with him. As you mentioned, John Spytek familiar with him. For most of Kappa's career, he's been a decent starter. Now, last year had a down year, but you see it all the time. Some guys just need to change of scenery. Again, there was talk about maybe there was an injury factor there. But some guys are just coming off of a down year. They go somewhere else and they bounce back well. But it's not like the Raiders are paying him $20 million. He is way down a list of average annual salary when it comes to guards at 2 years, $11 million, 5.5 guaranteed. So this isn't a big deal. And I think it's a decent signing for the depth along the O-line.
Absolutely. And but it's like everything today, Mo. We talk about it all the time, right? Which is this world we live in with this weird social media where everybody has an opinion and wants to spout off and wants to win arguments and wants to be negative, is this idea that every signing they do, every move that they make should be this landmark, massive deal. It's not going to happen. I know they have that money sitting there. Most people, I should study the NFL calendar, people. Look at where we are right now. The people who are getting released right now are cap casualties in places that they are no longer needed. Okay. So you're not out there with frontline free agents and some of these other guys that are out there that are still a ways away until the new year starts here coming up. So don't expect these big signings. Now, we also saw, as I joked about earlier, the Seattle Seahawks, DK Metcalf, apparently on the trading block. See a lot of people in Raiders, go get him. Again, last thing the Raiders need is a high-priced wide receiver. Now, Tyler Lockett released, a cap casualty, very good locker room guy, very close to Pete Carroll. Is he a guy I could see the Raiders signing and bringing in, not as their solution at wide receiver, but a good solid guy in his later years? Sure, I can see that. But again, everybody wants the next sexy thing and guy who's available. But then when you talk about the draft, and we're going to get into it in a minute, with Ashton Jeanty, who I suggested the Raiders take at number 6 if they can't get a quarterback, people are like, well, we don't need a running back. There's plenty of running back. Well, the same thing with young wide receivers. So this time when the Raiders are leading up to the draft, and we know that free agency, what they do in free agency will impact what they do in the draft. But there are question marks, and I think that the last thing the Raiders need to think about, now you're always in the market. If somebody calls you and they're willing to give you DK Metcalf for a 3rd and 4th round pick, okay, got it. But for a 1st and a 3rd or a 2nd, and there's a lot of different things at play here, Mo. So I think people jump at names, but what you really should be doing is saying, okay, a lot of money there, cap space wise, but a lot of needs. And how do you prioritize veterans versus rookies?
So I won't pivot, but I'll use that idea because you made a point that I've been trying to make with free agency and with re-signing players. It's all about the money. I know we get attached, not we, but as fans of the game, sometimes we get attached to certain players. But for me, when you're looking at re-signing guys like Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick, or signing someone like, a Chris Godwin, or trading for DK Metcalf, just using it as an example, it's all, what's the compensation? What is the price of acquiring or keeping such player? Because that was my pushback with Matthew Stafford. A lot of people are like, oh, you don't want Matthew Stafford? How could you not want Matthew Stafford? I'm like, it's going to cost you a first-round pick, and he wants a new deal. I had no issues with the $50 million a year. He's earned it. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. The Rams are a perennial playoff contender with him. But I'm not giving up pick 6 for Matthew Stafford. And reports came out later that the Raiders weren't willing to give up pick 6 for Matthew Stafford. It's all about the compensation. What does it cost? And a lot of people like to say, well, it's not our money. What do we care? Well, you do care when you don't have enough money to spread around to fill all your needs and you want to go watch a game. Excuse me, at Legion Stadium, and all of a sudden you don't have a starting cornerback because you spend all your money on a safety and a slot guy. Like, then you care about the money because you're saying, why don't we have a complete football team? Why don't we have depth? Well, money and cap space plays into that. So the price matters. Always think about the price. I know you get attached. You like these players. How much is it going to cost? So I'll just throw out an example. Let's say Chris Godwin hits the market, right? There's connections to John Spytek. What is it going to cost to get Chris Godwin in Las Vegas? Because he's going to have multiple suitors. Wide receiver market is bustling still. Teams want wide receivers, especially top-tier guys. Trayvon Merrick, I mentioned him. Nate Hobbs, I mentioned him. Fans want to bring these guys back. What is it going to cost? Because I'm hearing Trayvon Merrick can get $15+ million a year. That's top safety money. That's Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James money. I don't think he's on that tier. If he's going to cost you 15, 16 million, let the market decide his value. And then it comes back with a number. Are we willing to match that? Are we willing to go over that number? And you make your decision. The same goes for every player. It's all about the value. It's about the money. It's about the compensation to keep or acquire that player.
When you talked about what the Buccaneers and what Spytek did when he was there about draft and develop, and I think that's very, very important. You cannot win in the NFL just buying a bunch of free agents, right? You need to develop. And I think that some of these positions, and I think wide receiver is one of those positions. I'm not saying that if the Raiders do everything right this year and they get to a point where they're a borderline playoff wildcard team or better, that they can't go out and get a wide receiver. Those are the types of things you go get those veterans. I think when you need to supplement for depth, like they did with Kappa, or you need that little push over the top, right? You're missing a couple angles and you're not willing to wait to develop somebody because the win now mode is in. And so I think and I still disagree with some folks who talk to us via the show of how close the Raiders are. You and I have talked about how this team can turn things around pretty quickly, but this is not a championship team in year one under Pete Carroll and John Spytek. Let's be clear about that. And so you have to balance that out, to your point about money, compensation, if you're going for a free agent. And again, like you said, they still have Malcolm Kuntz out there. They have other people they need to sign, because then Bosa gets released yesterday and people, Bosa. Like, no. You have other people to take care of. So it's going to be fascinating to see what this team does. And again, it needs to do better, significantly better in the draft. It started to do better last year under Tom Telesco. Not everybody hit, but he did a pretty good job. And now you expect a lot more out of John Spytek based on his history. So we'll see where that goes. And speaking of draft, Mo, I just got to say, I don't take victory laps very, very often, but on the February 20th, I did my one and only full mock draft for the Raiders. They're way too early because we don't have free agency stuff done yet. But I had them going with Ashton Jeanty at number 6 in the first round, assuming all the quarterbacks will be gone. And I do assume they will be gone. Don't buy into the hype that Shedeur Sanders is falling down the board, blah, 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 blah. Don't believe it. But so I had Jeanty there, and some people agreed and a lot of people did not. Now I'm starting to see other mock drafts after the combine, after the start of at least the tagging season and sort of this early cap space release situation. Excuse me. Seeing a lot of people picking Jeanty going to number 6 at the Raiders. I know you're not necessarily on board with that particularly. It's not that you don't like the player, because you and I have talked a lot about Jeanty on the show, but you're starting to see more of this. And I'm not saying groupthink is a good thing, but it makes sense. I think if you look at Spytek, if you look at the Raiders situation at quarterback, if you look at what Pete Carroll does and what Chip Kelly does on offense, it starts to make a lot more sense if, and again, it's a big if, if things fall as we think they will in that first round in the first top 5 picks.
So of course it just matters of who's available, because if Shedeur Sanders is available at 6, you take the quarterback, right? It's just no brainer. Now if the quarterback is not available, then I think there's a possibility Jeanty comes into the discussion there. And I'm not totally against the idea,
Right.
because if you listen to what John Spytek said at the combine, he said they're going to use the Eagles recipe, build up the defensive front and lean on the run game, right? So they could be eyeing Jeanty at 6. Now I get the other side of the argument saying, well, you can also get a starter on day 2. Now, I'm not saying any of those guys are Jeanty.
No.
And he's obviously RB1. He's RB1 for me in this class as well. If you're gonna take a running back that early, take the best one, right? So I get that logic. But I could see the other side saying, Chip Kelly saying, well, or the Raiders, Pete Carroll particularly saying, well, let's get a different player there and still get a quality running back in the second or third round. I could see it both ways. I'm not dismissing Jeanty at 6, but I could see it on the other side of the coin as well, depending, as we all know, it depends also what the Raiders do in free agency, because if they go out and sign Najee Harris, right? Because Najee Harris has been connected to the Raiders. Nick Farabaugh over at Penn Live said, he was talking to a lot of people at the combine. The Raiders kept coming up. Now the Raiders have touched to a lot of free agents because they have a lot of cap space, but it makes sense. If you look at Pete Carroll, what he had in Seattle, Marshawn Lynch, Carlos Hyde, Chris Carson, bigger running backs. Chip Kelly, who did he have at UCLA? Zach Charbonnet, bigger running back. By the way, Zach Charbonnet then went to Seattle and Pete Carroll's last year. And then John Spytek, while he was director of player personnel in Tampa Bay, they signed Leonard Fournette, a.k.a. Playoff Lenny, a bigger running back. So there are some guys that fit that mold. Jeanty fits that mold, but also Judkins, who played under Chip Kelly in his offense, also fits that mold, had a pretty good combine. A lot of people talking about Judkins. I've been talking about Judkins last 2 months. So I'm with you, Scott, on people saying, oh, get this guy, get this running back, and you were ahead of the curve. So shout out to you, because I saw Mel Kiper Jr.'s mock draft, and he had Jeanty at 6. A lot of other people also had Jeanty at 6. I'm starting to see more Raider fans warm up to that idea.
And listen, I agree with you. I think if he's there at 6, and if I was them, again, we don't know, to your point about what their plan is, what their board looks like. It might have somebody else ahead there. But I do think that if you look at it, yes, I think no matter what happens, the Raiders will get a good running back in this draft, whether it's in round 1, round 2, round 3, one of those, because it is a very, very deep running back class. And that's not lost on me. So I'm not worried about the running back situation, the young running back situation, because I think you can look at it from this way. Hey, you could sign Najee Harris and still draft Ashton Jeanty, right? You have two. If you look at the NFL and this kind of, at least for right now, kind of a resurgence in running backs. And yes, Saquon Barkley was just kind of out of the world, just out of this world, I should say, with how he did this past year. But if you look at this kind of new system and how NFL teams are using running backs, you're seeing a lot of these tandems, right? So to have a young guy with an older, experienced guy like Najee Harris, if it's him or somebody else, great. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like we talk about quarterback, go get a veteran quarterback if you don't get a guy in the first round, and get a rookie in the second or third round, wherever it may be, and just continue to try and to continue to go back to the well and see if you can get the water that quenches your thirst. And so I think they should do the same thing at running back. We talk about quarterbacks. You talk about Shedeur Sanders. I agree. If Shedeur Sanders there at 6, I think they take him, no question. And there's been a lot of wrangling this past week, Mo, over Shedeur Sanders. A lot of people criticizing and these anonymous reports from teams saying that they didn't like him and that all these problems with him. And then that's turned into some racial stuff as well. That why do they take these young kids, and especially if they're African-American, and do this and do that. I don't look at it, and again, from my perspective, I see this happen every year. There's always this talk down. And again, it goes back to lying season. There's teams who are purposely sandbagging and putting out information about certain players because they would like to draft them. And if they can fall deep enough, then they have a shot at them. This happens, Mo, and I think it can't be lost in fans. So when you read stuff this time of the year or hear stuff, take it all with a grain of salt until you get closer to the draft and actually see what happens.
I'll just say straight out, the Shedeur Sanders stuff is ridiculous. There are people out there comparing Shedeur Sanders to Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
I think that's
insane.
the most ridiculous thing, because there were questions about Johnny Manziel's work ethic.
Yeah.
When he was coming, when he's coming out of college, is he just, playing well just based off talent? How committed is he going to be? I don't think there's a question about Shedeur Sanders' work ethic. And there were reports, I'm sure you saw him, a lot of people saw him, that he was arrogant and brash in some of his interviews. I find it odd that gets circulated thousands and thousands of times. But there's also an interview with him and Chris Sims where he talks about, I'm not a finished product. I can be a lot better than I was. He was very humble. That didn't get a lot of circulation. Yeah. So what this reminds me of, different issue, but this reminds me of, I don't know if you remember this, Scott, because we were pounding the table for CJ Stroud when he came out of Ohio State. Remember the S2 scores? Oh, CJ Stroud's S2 scores aren't great. He may fall. S2 scores are correlated to a quarterback's mental processing. Right. A low S2 score, there was some concern about CJ Stroud being able to process from the pocket. And there was questions about, could he fall? And they were digging back to history. Does he have the mental makeup to be a starting quarterback in this league? CJ Stroud wound up going number 2 overall. So I'm not buying these reports that I saw a mock draft where Shedeur Sanders wasn't even a first round pick. Now you may have your assessment may be that Shedeur Sanders isn't a first round pick, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but he's going in the first round. There is not a world in which Shedeur Sanders is not picked in the first round. Nope. with teams needing a quarterback, even on the back end of it. Like I cannot see like the Steelers and the Rams, if Shedeur Sanders is available, those teams passing on him with the need at quarterback they had. Even with the Rams bringing back Matthew Stafford, Matthew Stafford's only going to be around for maybe 2 years, 3 years. Right. So Shedeur is not falling out of the first round. I still think he's going to be a top 5 pick. But if he's there for the Raiders at 6, I don't see a world, and I posted this on X, Scott, I don't see a world in which Tom Brady says, no, we're not going to take Shedeur Sanders. We're going to take that cornerback out of Michigan. No offense to Will Johnson or that defensive tackle out of Michigan. No offense to Mason Graham. They're taking the quarterback.
Especially because I think as fans, and rightfully so, because NFL general managers and some of the teams want instant gratification when they draft a quarterback that high. And I understand that you're investing a ton of money. But you and I have discussed here many times too, Tom Brady has been very public. And again, will Tom Brady? Yes, Tom Brady is going to be very, very, very active in helping the Raiders select their quarterback. And I will tell you this, he has reiterated over and over and over again that he believes the NFL is not patient enough with young quarterbacks, right? He went through the process. He understands he had a terrible combine. I saw people saying, well, we got to get out on Will Howard. Look what a terrible combine. So what? Drew Brees had a brutal combine. Go watch Drew Brees in the combine. Okay. People thought it was terrible. Okay. Didn't affect him. And look what he went on to do. So again, the underwear Olympics do not decide whether or not a player. Remember, Anthony Richardson was touted as the next coming of Christ of football. And look what we have. Again, I go back to what I said on draft night. That night, he's going to be a tight end. So anyway, I think that it gets all blown out of proportion. And Shedeur Sanders is a good player. And if he is there, I 100% agree with you. The Raiders will take him. I don't think he'll last that long. I think you're going to see Cam Ward go number 1 or 2. And you're going to see Shedeur Sanders go right there too. So it's gonna play itself out. We'll talk next week too about the veteran quarterback situation between now and the start of free agency in the new league year. We'll start to see something. We've already heard Russell Wilson not going to happen, the reunion there. So a lot of you are going to be happy about that. We know Sam Darnold in Minnesota is still in play there, and obviously the Stafford thing resolved itself. So we'll see what the Raiders do at quarterback, but it's going to be a great and interesting month and a half. I mean, it's going to go really fast, Raider Nation, because the Raiders are going to be, I think, moving a lot, doing a lot, and then gearing up for what's going to be a very vital and important draft for their future. Okay, that's going to close out our first segment of 2 here on our show on Thursday. Hope you're chugging towards the weekend, having fun with us, talking Raiders football. When we come back, we're going to get to your calls and see what you have to say. We'll see what people are thinking about out there and what they have to say with this little lull, although it's been good, positive Raider news so far. So I'm thinking people should feel really good. You're with Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. We're coming back right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Home stretch here on Silver and Black. Today, we're in the off season, but the Raiders are moving and grooving. Got a lot to do this off season to get back to making you much more proud of them on the field. Scott Gulbransen, Moton with you. We're talking Raiders football. Again, don't forget, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. If you're watching us on video, please hit that subscribe button plus the notifications bell and give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Share it with your friends in Raider Nation. If they don't already listen to the show, tell them what's wrong with you. You got to listen to Scott and Mo. And got a lot of stuff coming up in the offseason that you're going to enjoy, I am sure. And now, while we're going to get into the calls here, it's been really interesting. And I'm not going to say who it was, but it's somebody who contacts the show quite often. And they texted me the night before Maxx Crosby's deal was signed, because Max had done some cryptic social media message, which we know today's younger NFL players, for some reason, they really like to subtweet stuff a lot. Maxx Crosby, this listener of ours was like, I'm so tired of this Maxx Crosby cryptic. If he doesn't want to be here, just tell him to leave. And then, of course, the next day he signs his deal with the Raiders to keep him in the fold, and hopefully, like he always wanted, a Raider for life. But I'll tell you what, man, it's hard. I think there's so much information out there, so much, and that's why this lying season thing, just everything you hear, don't get too high, don't get too low. As we lead up to the draft now and free agency, this stuff just permeates, and there's those peddlers out there who really do massive clickbait stuff. They know Raider Nation is intense. They know Raider Nation is going to root on and want to learn everything they can about their team, but you got to be careful.
Always consider the source.
Yep.
That we learned that in journalism school. Always consider the source. Who is it coming from? If you're getting your rumors from accounts that aren't legitimate, then that's on you. There's some times where you can see information from certain accounts, and you know that these accounts bait people into reacting, because we all know that content farming exists. People just want their views on there so they can get their Twitter check. Be careful. Be careful what you jump on and what you run with out there. Always consider the source. How is this person's record as far as reporting news, reporting rumors, and reporting facts, and take it from there. But as Scott said, don't believe everything you read on social media.
Yep, absolutely. And don't get, I've seen some in Raider Nation harassing, for example, some of the beat writers for missing on stories. And what are you guys doing? You missed this one. That's not what it is. Because a story wasn't broken by a reporter doesn't mean that they're not on top of things. So it's funny how there's now an adversarial relationship sometimes, and there's always been that. I mean, there's some writers in the past, and I think it's actually gotten a lot better, because in the past, when I was a kid, I remember because it was all newspapers, right? There was no internet. There was writers who that was their job. They push buttons. So you hated that columnist because they were always negative about your team or whatever. When you're talking about beat writers, listen, they're just doing their job. And to say, well, you missed on this, like they owe you breaking news. And remember, Mo talked about journalism school, which I went to, Mo went to, and most of those guys went to as well. You don't report something because one person told you. You have to get verification. You have to get multiple sources, and you might know something, but you can't write about it because you don't have enough sources. Because if it goes the other way, then what? Oh, look, you said, and listen, there's people who cover the Raiders who have done that, who said something's going to happen. And of course it doesn't happen. And then there's the excuse afterwards. Be respectful of people out there who wait on stories. Mo and I get stuff too, right? Mo, we get stuff. We know people. I'm not saying we're some big insiders, but we know people who tell us stuff. You and I talk about it and it informs our discussion, but we're not going to come out and say it because we have one person telling us that or two people telling us that. And it's really not something that you can necessarily breaking news, right? So just have some grace out there and understand that there might be other things that you don't know about that went into that.
Really quick too, Scott, there's a difference between a beat reporter telling you what he's hearing and a beat reporter telling you that this is going to happen. Right. So I'll just say it and be straightforward and honest. A lot of people have been giving Vinny Bonsignore a lot of flack, right?
That's why I brought this up. Exactly.
And Vinny is basically telling you what he's hearing. I have not seen a post from Vinny saying the Raiders are going to sign Matthew Stafford. I didn't see a report from Vinny saying that the Raiders are going to hire Ben Johnson. I've seen, this is picking up steam. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of buzz about this. So he's telling you what he's hearing. He's not giving you his opinion on what's going to happen. I've seen people ask Vinny, hey, what do you think is going to happen? And then he'll give his opinion. But there's a difference between telling you this is going to happen. The Raiders are going to hire or sign this guy. And this is what I'm hearing. And I think that delineation needs to be made.
And it's the perfect example of killing the messenger, right? Which is so in that case, Vinny's talking about the steam that was rolling around Stafford, which all was true because after the fact and after he went back to the Rams, it was confirmed that the Giants were willing to trade the compensation they wanted. The Raiders were all in too. We don't know about the details there, but it was been confirmed by multiple sources, multiple insiders, if you will. So there was nothing said by Vinny that was incorrect. But then when it doesn't happen and people get disappointed, they look for somebody to lash out at. And so you're going to lash out at the guy who said what he was hearing. Go ahead, but just understand and listen. I'm not saying everybody in journalism is ethical or good at what they do, because like every profession, there's people who do it with all sorts of agendas and things like that. He's not one of those. So just out there. And I don't mean to lecture people. And I know somebody will leave a comment on YouTube saying, "Oh, okay, fine. Have your voice. Think the way you want to think." But I just wanted to say that up front. All right, we're going to get to the calls now, Mo. Here we go. We got a first-time caller coming to us out of Atlanta. I love, because we're a podcast that goes nationwide, and obviously a lot of our listeners in Los Angeles, in Las Vegas, in the Bay Area, but I love hearing from people all over the country, which we do. Here is a caller from Atlanta.
What's going on, Scott and Mo? This is Raider J calling from Atlanta. Listen to the show every day. Big fan. I was calling because I heard you guys talking about the different quarterbacks and the likelihood of the Raiders getting, likely quarterbacks through free agency as well as the draft. And I guess my question was, with regard to who you might select specifically, I guess as maybe a day 2 pick potentially, different guys with different skill sets. Is there a thought to trying to pair skill sets in terms of not having to change your offensive scheme? So, for instance, if you were to get somebody like a, Jalen Milroe or something like that, if you had the opportunity to get, kind of breaking all man's names from the Steelers, but the running quarterback for the Steelers from Ohio State, would that make more sense than getting somebody maybe like Will Howard, who isn't as much of a running quarterback and might not necessarily fit into that offensive scheme? Just want to hear you guys' thoughts about it.
All right, there's Raider J from Atlanta. Thanks for calling in, man. We appreciate it. Good question here. And I think, Mo, you look at this about systems. So Chip Kelly, listen, they adapt systems all the time, but I do think you mentioned Will Howard, which I also in my mock draft had the Raiders picking him in the second round. But you look at it, and again, him and Justin Fields both played at Ohio State under different offensive coordinators, of course. But both are not running. Justin Fields is not a running quarterback, nor is Will Howard. They are functionally mobile. Again, you can buy that T-shirt, by the way, up on the store if you'd like to get it, which I'll flash up there now. So you can look at both those guys as being mobile quarterbacks that can run and have use of their legs when they need to. They also create on the run. But his question about veterans, I think we're starting to see the veteran pool look around. We still have guys out there like Fields and others who the Raiders can look at. But when you look at pairing a veteran and a rookie, Mo, to fit into that system, I think you have to find somebody who's close to be able to just plug and play in that system. But more than that, if you really believe a quarterback you get in the second round on day 2, let's say, is the guy that you think you can develop into the long-term starter, then that's your bigger concern, isn't it? Right.
And also I'll say, Raider J, that this is a good question because I actually addressed this on my Bleach Report Live. And so the crux of his question, he's basically asking, do you want to pair a veteran and a rookie with similar skill sets so that you don't have to change too much of the offense if you're moving between one or the other? The prime example is the one that he half brought up. So Justin Fields is the quarterback from Pittsburgh that he was blanking on. And I brought this scenario up in my Bleach Report Live. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. But I'll put it out there anyway. If you're going to sign Justin Fields, and then you want to draft Jalen Milroe on day 2, it makes sense based on the skill set. If you want an athletic quarterback room, if you want to completely turn over the Raiders quarterback room and say, we want to go from having marginally athletic guys to just an athletic guys at the position overall, pairing up Justin Fields and Jalen Milroe makes sense. Similar skill sets. They can both pick up a lot of yards on the ground with their legs. Jalen Milroe, in my opinion, is probably going to need to sit for at least a year. So if you're plugging in Justin Fields as your starter, at least for the short term, year 1, year 2, and then you're transitioning over to Jalen Milroe, you wouldn't have to change too much of the offense when you're transitioning because their skill sets are so similar. Now, you mentioned functional mobility. Chip Kelly's offense, I believe it could be more dynamic with a functioning mobile quarterback, especially a quarterback that can give you some of those yards and big plays with his legs. So Jackson Dart is an athletic quarterback. Will Howard has some athleticism. In free agency, if the Raiders are looking for that guy to plug in right away, Marcus Mariota has some athleticism. I'm not high on Marcus Mariota, but I get how his skill set can work in Chip Kelly's offense. Sam Darnold is an athletic quarterback as well. As you know, I'm a big Sam Darnold guy, if for the right price. Again, the key is for the right price. But to Raider J's question, you see a lot of teams do this where their starter and their backups have similar skill sets. Not exactly the same, but similar skill sets. So you're not going from this type of quarterback to that type of quarterback where they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. That's why I give, really quick, this is why I give the Colts a lot of credit for transitioning from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco last year. They couldn't be any more opposite. I'm not talking about the way they look, but I'm talking about their skill set. One guy is an uber athletic quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and Joe Flacco is basically a statue, a 40-year-old statue at quarterback. You usually don't see that in the NFL. You usually see your top 2 quarterbacks have very similar skill sets. So I think a Justin Fields, Jalen Milroe combination could make sense for the Raiders.
Absolutely. Great call. Raider Jade, call us again. We appreciate it. Now we're going out from the Peach State to the Show Me State in Dominique.
Case God knows this Dominique from the Show Me State. I've got 3 things, so I got to make it quick. The first thing is Justin Fields. A lot of people says the kid can't throw. He had a 4-2 record last year. He had a 66% completion percentage, over 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. Then on the ground, he had 230 rush yards and 5 touchdowns. He's a guy, 26 years old, so he still has upside. His best football is ahead of him. People saying he can't throw. He had a 66% completion percentage, guys. With Chip Kelly, he would be awesome. My next thing, Jalen Milroe. A lot of people saying he can't throw. Listen, I'm not saying draft Jalen Milroe and bring him in and start him day 1. No, of course not. You let the kid develop. But with his elite traits and a Chip Kelly offense, he'll be amazing. The same criticism people are saying about Milroe, I heard the same thing about Lamar Jackson coming out. Jalen Hurts coming out. Hell, even Josh Allen. You get that kid, you developed him. Those traits that he has are amazing. His issues can be fixed with great coaching. Third thing, Alex Kappa signing. Absolute terrible. The guy was first in sacks allowed, pressures, and hurries. Why even waste even a penny on a guy like that? Didn't like that at all. Let me know what you guys think about everything. Appreciate you guys. I know I have to make it real quick. Thank you. I'll be listening as always.
Dominique, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. And I agree with you on the quarterbacks. You know, a lot of people, again, I always push back, not to be a smartass, but I get people with hot takes on X all the time. I might mention a player and they're like, oh, he sucks. He can't do this. Really? Why are you basing that on? What are you? So Dominique goes to the stats, and I know stats can be misleading sometimes, but Justin Fields did a very good job in Pittsburgh. When you look at it, to his point about 66% completion rate, 5 TDs to 1 interception. Also, the thing with Milroe develop, which goes right in line with what we were talking about earlier, Mo, on Tom Brady wanting a quarterback that they can develop. They don't want to rush somebody, which is why they will go get a free agent of some sort. And Dom, we talked about it earlier. We disagree with you on the Kappa as a depth signing. Again, the history of the Raiders going back for 50 years on taking players who everybody wrote off, right? You give a guy, and there's not downside here. If you end up cutting him before you even get to roster cuts, totally, it doesn't cost you much. So why not take a flyer? If the guy's not very good, then you let him go. If he's pretty good, then you have some depth on the offensive line.
So I'm 100% with Dominique on Justin Fields. I think Dominique and I are leading the Justin Fields can still be a good quarterback in the NFL bandwagon.
Yep.
I think we've been probably Dominique and I have probably been the loudest on that. And I still think Justin Fields can be a pretty good quarterback on a pro level. I think you can have that Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield push in the right system, in the right spot. I do think he's going to wind up back in Pittsburgh, though. And Jalen Milroe, as I say, probably have to sit a year. But none of these quarterbacks coming out, even Cam Ward, none of these guys are finished products. Shedeur Sanders said it himself. He said, I'm not a finished product. So you look at Jalen Milroe's upside. If you can get him to be a little more consistent from the pocket, you may have something in him. The Alex Kappa thing, we talked about it earlier. Dominique, I understand the numbers are terrible for Alex Kappa last year in pass pro, but you see this all the time where if a guy has been around for 7-8 years and for most of his career he's been an average decent starter, and then you have one bad year, sometimes that guy can have a bounce back year. It wasn't like Alex Kappa has been terrible since the Buccaneers drafted him in the 3rd round. He's again, for most of his career, he's been a decent starter. He's had one terrible year. In 2024, Pro Football Focus had Alex Kappa as a top 21 guard in the league. So that tells you, like, he was a good player before last year. I'm willing to give him a chance to see if he has a bounce back year in a different system.
That's right. All right, Dominique, thanks. Now we're going out to our good buddy, Gary Harkenreader. We haven't heard from him in a bit. Here he is.
Hey, Gary Harkenreader from the Poconos. It's my 2nd attempt at this call. I only talk for a hobby. Hey, you know what? I'm frustrated with all this quarterback talk. Tom Brady has the big board for the quarterbacks. Whoever Brady wants is who the Raiders want. It'll be up to Chip Kelly's job to develop an offense around the quarterback. I mean, even if they ended up with Moe or Scott as the quarterback, Chip Kelly would have to design an offense. So what I expect is that there's going to be 4 to 5 quarterbacks in camp. It's all about competition and teaching. Hey, that's it. Thanks for everything you do. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Great call by Gary there. I agree with him, Mo. I think you mentioned it earlier. Maybe they want to completely redo the quarterback room. I don't know they're there yet because we haven't seen him sign. The first domino hasn't fallen in the quarterback race thing here, which is either draft or free agent. And so we don't know, but I could see it happening. And to his point, you want 4 guys. 5 would be a lot, but 4 or 5 in there to compete and see what you got. You want the wily veteran. You need that guy that, hey, if you get a rookie and he's not ready to go, or if you get a veteran who's got a couple years in who's not ready to go, i.e. Aiden O'Connell, you still have the vet there that can be your starter or your bridge guy. But I agree. I think you got to put those guys out there, figure out who you want to do. And yeah, Tom Brady's going to have massive, massive influence over that. And I think he's right. I think Chip Kelly has an offense, so he knows who can play well in his offense. But believe me, if they can get a guy and they got to tweak things a little bit, they will.
Absolutely. I think Chip Kelly can adjust. Of course, I think it offense runs a lot better if you have an athletic quarterback there, because you could do a little bit more with him. But in my opinion, the early outlook of this quarterback room, I have Aiden O'Connell, because they're already going to release Gardner Minshew. We got that news on Wednesday. You got Aiden O'Connell. You're going to have Aiden O'Connell, a veteran who they're going to sign, and somewhere they're going to draft. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, depending on who it is, you could have a full-blown quarterback competition come spring, summer, and may the best man win, whoever looks best in Chip Kelly's system. Or you may have a Shedeur Sanders where you're thinking, regardless of what happens, this guy could be the future. If the Reds do make a big splash with Sam Darnold, then you have someone who could start for a full year regardless of what happens in the draft. So I always say this: you fill your needs in free agency so that you can draft for value. You don't have to reach. You don't have to stretch at certain positions. A quarterback, you get a little leeway there, but you fill your needs in free agency so that you go into the draft thinking, okay, when we're on the clock, who is the best player available? It's the best approach, in my opinion.
All right. Thanks for the call, Gary. We appreciate it. Now we're on to Tarek. Here's Tarek.
Scott and Mo, what's going on, fellas? This is Tarek checking in with you guys from Davenport, Iowa. We're about eight days out from free agency. I expect it to get pretty wild this week. Obviously, I think a lot more deals are going to be put into place. Obviously, you can't put ink to paper until the 12th. News about Darnold: the Vikings did not tag him today. I wonder if they will re-sign him before free agency begins. I think that is unlikely. You got to wonder where the Raiders are at in their pursuit of Darnold now that Stafford's out the door. I think if the Raiders do sign Sam Darnold, I don't know how contracts work, but they better have an out. I don't trust Sam Darnold. He's had one good year in his entire career. I'm not going to go so far as to say he gives me Minshew 2.0 type vibes, but I don't trust him. I do understand that any quarterback will probably be a lot more effective and competent in Chip Kelly's offense. But I do believe that if they do get Darnold, what do you guys think? If they get Darnold, do you think they still get Sanders if he falls at number 6? I think if the Raiders do get Darnold, they probably hope he is the solution at quarterback considering his age and the productivity he had last season. I think it would be really something stunning, actually, if the Raiders pass up on Sanders at number 6 if he's sitting there. I don't think that happens, though. I definitely want to know what your thoughts are with regards to the potential combination of Darnold and then Sanders. I think if the Raiders do get Sam Darnold, I do think there's a chance that they get the best available player on their board, at number 6, and then go with a quarterback in subsequent rounds. Love to hear your thoughts on that, guys. Have a fantastic day, and I look forward to your next show. Go Raiders, and let's fire this free agency thing up. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
There's Tarek, man. Thanks for the call. Brings up a good point there, Mo. I think if they sign Darnold, contract structure-wise is what matters. Even if you gave him, he's a young guy. Even if you gave him 5 years, you can structure that with money up front where you, after, the guaranteed money is only in the first 2 years. And then after that, it goes away. There are different ways to structure the contract, number one. Number two is if Sam Darnold is signed and Shedeur Sanders is there at number 6, I still think they take Sanders. You take quarterbacks, right? If you have a quarterback of that caliber there, you take them. Doesn't matter who you signed, right? Just like we saw with Atlanta. Everybody thought Atlanta was crazy last year, right? Now look at it. So I think you got to do that. But I don't mind or disagree necessarily with people's pessimism around Sam Darnold, because we saw him have that outlier year of his career in Minnesota because of who he was playing for and because of his play caller there. So I understand people's nervousness with Sam Darnold.
Right, but Geno Smith goes to Seattle and he played well. He had an outlier year, and they've continued to commit to him. Baker Mayfield signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Buccaneers. His first year was considered sort of an outlier year, though he did have a good year in Cleveland too. But that was considered, is Baker Mayfield really the real deal? And he's continued to play well. Again, I say this over and over again about Sam Darnold. Sometimes it just takes a quarterback getting to a good spot with a good supporting cast where he can live up or play up to his potential. Again, I'm in New York. I know the Jets stink actually exists. Geno Smith, prime example. What has he been after leaving the Jets? Sam Darnold, I know he bounced around a bit, was in Carolina. They can't develop a quarterback either. He gets in a good spot in Minnesota. All of a sudden, he looks like a serviceable starting quarterback, a Pro Bowl quarterback at that. So I would just say be careful about the outlier year argument, because Geno and Baker went through the same thing where they had to prove over and over again that outlier year wasn't an outlier. They just needed to land in the right situation. Now, you mentioned it really quick, Scott. If the Raiders were to sign Sam Darnold, you still draft Shedeur Sanders. And you mentioned it. Look at what happened in Atlanta. They signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $160, $180 million deal. And Kirk Cousins stunk it up and was benched by the end of the year. Now, different situation because Sam Darnold is not as old as Kirk Cousins and he's not coming off of a torn Achilles. But the point still stands because Tarek said it. Tarek said he doesn't trust Sam Darnold. A lot of Raider fans don't trust Sam Darnold because we've only seen one quality year from him. So why wouldn't you still draft a quarterback if you don't trust Sam Darnold? It's better to have 2 starting caliber quarterbacks than have none. It's a good problem to have because guess what? If you sign Sam Darnold and he's good, then you can flip him for a draft pick once you're ready to move on to Shedeur Sanders. If Sam Darnold is terrible, you would think that the Raiders front office is smart enough to give themselves a 2-year out because he doesn't have a long history of being a starting quarterback, a quality one. So you give yourself a 2-year out just in case he does stink, and then you can move on and recoup a lot of that money.
Exactly. All about the structure. And by the way, another outlier guy, remember Kurt Warner?
Yeah.
had that season, wins a Super Bowl, and then people are like, oh well, and then he goes to St. Louis, goes to Phoenix and takes them. He didn't win the Super Bowl again, but he got back there. So again, you just never know. People click at different times, and
Right.
there's probably quarterbacks out there who didn't get that second or third opportunity, and sometimes fourth opportunity, who might have made it.
Sorry, just cut you off, Scott,
Yeah.
but really quick, why is it that over the past few years, Raider fans have been pining for, oh, this guy could be Rich Gannon? Rich Gannon is the prime example. What was he before he got to the Raiders? He gets to the Raiders, and all of a sudden, he's an MVP caliber quarterback. So you know the story of how it just takes a quarterback in some cases just to get to the right situation. Now you don't hear, oh, Sam Darnold could be Rich Gannon. Now it's, oh, I'm not saying Tarek is doing this, but I find it funny how Gardner, Minshew, and all of these guys were getting the Rich Gannon comparisons. Jimmy Garoppolo, oh, he could be the next Rich Gannon. Why is this argument not being touted for Sam Darnold, who is much younger?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he was a top 3 pick in his draft class. It wasn't like Sam Darnold coming out of USC with some bum.
Right.
He had a ton of potential, was young coming out of USC, and all of a sudden we see him play well in the right spot. I think the Raiders have a good enough offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, to get the best out of Sam Darnold.
Absolutely. All right, now we're going out. We're going from Iowa to Hawaii, and our buddy MDM, here he is.
Aloha, Scott and Moe. This is MDM over in Hawaii. Real quick, I just kind of wanted to talk about where we're going to move forward with our quarterback. Obviously, we have our coaches in place, and there's a lot of talk. Let me go real quick into this whole Matthew Stafford thing that I said didn't make sense. The reason it didn't make sense is I said if he was so good, why would the Rams let him go? And as it turns out, the Rams didn't let him go. They re-signed him. So kind of proved my point on that one. Now, as far as where we're going now, Sam Darnold is one of the people that we're looking at. And I think we're kind of at a crossroads. They're saying we want to win now, which, is understandable. But I don't necessarily think we have the team around whatever quarterback to go very far in the playoffs this year. So we signed a Sam Darnold, where he's a guy that you're kind of committing to for at least a couple of years. I don't think he's going to sign on a 1-year contract. I think he's going to obviously want a multi-year contract, which would then kind of preclude us from going the route of getting the young quarterback on a rookie contract. And so I think we kind of got to make a decision. I think if you go Sam Darnold, you're kind of going in on him and saying, okay, let's build a team around him. Maybe we draft, complementary players to the quarterback, take a flyer on a mid-round quarterback. But if not, we want to go with the young quarterback. We might be getting a guy like Aaron Rodgers, because he's a guy that we can have come in for maybe 1 year and maybe two to mentor the younger quarterback that we draft. And again, where I stand on that one. I think we should go all in. If we think Cam Ward's the guy this year, I think he's the best of the quarterbacks. Pretty much everybody does. I'd be very excited to see him in a Chip Kelly offense and use all that free agency money to re-sign our defensive players and, get some offensive linemen, which are usually pretty easy to pick up in free agency. I'm not talking about Kappa, because maybe he's a backup fringe starter. So I just kind of want to pose that question to you, Scott and Moe. Like, moving forward with our quarterback, do we go the route where we try to get a Sam Darnold and put him in place for a couple of years and see where we go? Or do we want to go with that rookie quarterback on the rookie contract, be willing to build around him? And, it might take a year or two to really click. But that's where I'm at. Hope you guys are well. God bless.
All right, there's MDM. Good call. And listen, I think you got to change the mindset with this as fans out there, which is, if you commit to Sam Darnold, as Mo mentioned a few calls ago, you can sign him to a 5-year deal, but you got an out after 2. Okay, so you structure the contract, you put a lot of the money up front, the guarantees and all that stuff up front happens all the time because he's had the one good year. But I disagree with MDM on there, Mo. I want to get your point. I don't think that if you sign Darnold, you're committing to him and you're not going to get a young quarterback. We just talked about it. If Sanders was there at 6 and you already signed Darnold, I'd still take Sanders. I think you get both. You get a guy, and you know what? What a great problem to have. If Sam Darnold goes out and has another year like he had last year, but in a Raider uniform, awesome. You still got the young guy. You're in no hurry. Yeah, he's on his rookie deal, but so what? This is how it used to go. People used to do this before the league changed and all this other stuff. I think that there's no downside to doing it the same way, having a guy come in and hope he works out great, give him the money, and then you get that young guy. And yes, you have other needs too, but there's no better or there's no greater need than quarterback. They're just not.
So I'll start out with where I agree with MDM, and it's Cam Ward's been my QB1. Like I said, I was
Forever.
talking about Cam Ward last offseason, that if he would have came out last offseason, I would have taken Cam Ward in the first round. So the only problem with the Cam Ward thing, and there are reports that the Raiders may be interested in trading up for Cam Ward, is just that I think that if the Giants want Cam Ward, they're going to be able to offer a better package, because the Giants would be giving the Titans pick 3, the Raiders are offering pick 6. So unless the Raiders are willing to offer a little more to outbid the Giants to move up, then I just don't see it happening, because they're going to have to step over other teams that need quarterbacks. Now I'll get to the either or scenario, and I think a lot of people look at certain roster situations and decisions as it's either this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he posed the question: either you sign Sam Darnold and commit to him, or you go the rookie quarterback route. He said, comes to a crossroads, got to make a decision. Now, why not just do both? Because again, a lot of people, including us, criticize the Falcons for what they did last year, signing Kirk Cousins to a big deal and then drafting Michael Penix at 8. What are they doing? It looks genius now, right? So as you said, Scott, it's a good problem to have. If you sign Sam Darnold to, let's say, a $40 million deal, right? And I always say the contract that you hear announced is not completely real. I don't want to say not real, but let's say Sam Darnold signs 4 years, $160 million. He's not really getting $160 million unless he plays out the whole length of that contract.
Right.
You always look at the guaranteed money. How many times are guys cut before their contract expires or get extensions before their contract expires? So even if he gets $160 million, is he really getting $160 million? Probably not. Look at the guaranteed money. You can always put a 2-year out in there. If you sign Sam Darnold for a 4-year deal with $40 million or somewhere around there, and you still draft Shedeur Sanders, that's absolutely fine. Because as I just said to the previous caller, if Sam Darnold plays well, whenever you're ready to start Shedeur Sanders, you can flip Sam Darnold for a draft pick, a high draft pick. If Sam Darnold stinks and you have the 2-year out, you have Shedeur Sanders right there ready to go, and you can just move on. And it won't be like, oh, we made one decision or the other didn't work out. No, take as many swings at the quarterback position as you can until you get it right.
Absolutely. Great call, MDM. We appreciate you as always, man. Now we're going out to Anders in Oakland.
Hey, fellas, it's Anders calling from Oakland, California. Hey, Scott, just want to let you know I just got back from Sweden, where I was within 3 miles of the Norwegian border, and all of these people wanted me to say hello to good old Scott, thinking that he's one of our people. Anyway, thinking about that Chiefs game, coming back to that, and I don't know shit about football, really. I don't know all that much about players. Sanders, Ward, Bob the Builder. I can't tell you who's better. But I do know a little something about strategy. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of these coaches have done is they try to sort of outsmart Andy Reid and try to attack kind of the weakness of that team, which is the defense, supposedly, at least in comparison to the offense. And so you have to try to outscore him and outscore his team and hope to keep Mahomes off the field. And so common sense tells you to do that, but the master of strategy, Sun Tzu, tells you that very clear about what you need to do, and that is you actually go at your opponent's strength, not their weakness. And in the case of the Chiefs, the strength was obviously their offense, and the Eagles didn't worry so much about their own offense. What they did is they went out to demolish the Chiefs' offense. And they did. Buffalo and the Niners, they kind of did the opposite of saying we're going to try to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes on the offensive side of the ball. And I think the results sort of speak for themselves. And the opponent's weakness will just take care of itself. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. But to me, spending some time on the strategy stuff, it just makes a lot of sense to do what we did. Anyway, hope you're all well, and I'm glad to look forward to listening to the show again. Bye.
All right, great call by Anders there, and he references the art of war in Sun Tzu. I love that. Fantastic. You can tell he's a corporate business guy, obviously. But good points there, Mo, about that, because you see what the Eagles defense, oof, really, really good. But I agree, there's something there because again, you're gonna always come back to, no matter how much you hate the Chiefs out there in Raider Nation, they are the standard and they are the ones to beat, not only in your division, but in the AFC side. And so I think exactly what he's saying is you have to build your team. The commitment to Maxx Crosby, very important to that. So I think the Raiders will do that. I think Pete Carroll knows that. He's a great coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been all around. The guy knows what he's doing. So I think you're going to see a different strategy here from the Raiders and how they not only play all the teams in the NFL, but also how they attack overcoming the Chiefs' bottleneck on the division.
I like the philosophical war strategy approach that he took with his call there and attacking the opponent's strength and not trying to necessarily outscore the Chiefs, but just attacking their offense. And I will say this, if you're looking at the Chiefs offense, there was a weakness within their strength, if I could say that, right? So you're attacking their offense, but they had an issue at left tackle. So if you remember in the Super Bowl, they moved Joe Tooney, who by the way has been traded to the Bears now. They moved Joe Tooney from left guard to left tackle because they've had a left tackle issue all last season. And what happened? Joe Tooney struggled at left tackle against that Eagles defensive front. And also him moving out of his natural position left Patrick Mahomes vulnerable on his interior at left guard. So the Eagles were able to capitalize on that. So they had a weakness within their strength, if that makes sense. But if you look at the way the Raiders have played the Chiefs over the past couple of years, the Raiders have been competitive with them. They beat them on Christmas, as we all know. But that game that they just played on Black Friday, they are a bumbled snap away from beating them again with Aiden O'Connell and a lot of injuries, on that across that roster. So the Raiders know what it takes to beat the Chiefs, and I think as you mentioned, re-signing Maxx Crosby. Pete Carroll said that he's anxious to get Malcolm Kuntz back. I think Caleb Von Chase on his back, building up that defensive front. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after Milton Williams out of Philadelphia in free agency or draft high defensive tackle. I think they're going to build up that defensive front. John Spytek mentioned it, knowing who they have to play in that division. A physical Chargers team, the Denver Broncos, who are on the way up, the Kansas City Chiefs, who they play closely with their defense being the strength of those games. They understand what it takes to beat the Chiefs. Now they just have to execute the plan.
Right. Good call. Appreciate it. Anders, as always. And we're going to close out the show with our buddy Yan Dog. Here's Yan Dog.
Mo, Yan Dog. I'm going to speak faster because last time I was cut off, I haven't talked to you in a few weeks. I like the combination of Justin Fields and Jackson Dart. That would be great. And I love that running back from Boise State. Also, when I talked to you guys a few weeks ago, I was talking about Nick Bolton. Well, Raiders on the hot trail for him, and I hope they get him to kill us in the long run. Also, I'd like to get Metcalf. That would be nice. I know they were talking about Metcalf, and thank God, from what I hear, we signed Crosby to 3 more years for $1.65 million, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I want you guys to let me know what you think and how we're doing with everything. I think the Raiders are really moving ahead pretty fast, though, and they're doing good. Anyway, that's about it, guys. I just want to know what you guys think about how things are going. All right, and that's it. Okay, over and out. Yan Dog.
There you go. Yan Dog, thanks for the call, man. And Mo, listen, I know we've talked a lot about what he addressed there. I think that the situation with the Raiders are doing so far, they're going through methodically. They're doing what they need to do. DK Metcalf's going to be an unrestricted free agent after next year. I just don't see the need to trade for him now. I think there's ways. I'd like to see the Raiders go out and get good young wide receivers and supplement them with some veterans for now, because they're still developing with the quarterback situation. You have Brock Bowers, as he mentioned. You could take Ashton Jeanty, so you'll have several weapons on offense. So I think you can get by with that. And Brock Bowers really is both a tight end and a wide receiver. I mean, the guy is just phenomenal. So I think you're in a better spot than most people think the Raiders are at. But tell me a little bit about what he had to say there and what you think.
So Yan Dog is just strolling through the grocery store with his shopping list of groceries there. Pick your store, Trader Joe's, whatever you want to say. He's got a list. He got out here with a list of players. So we'll go through it really quick. We talked about the Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. We talked about that early in the show. He's a possibility at 6. Wouldn't be my it depends on, I'll say this, it depends on who's available at 6. If Shedeur Sanders is there, that's the pick for me. But if he's not there, then you start thinking about Ashton Jeanty, Will Johnson, Mason Graham. Some people like T-Mac out of Arizona. If the Raiders don't get a wide receiver in free agency, I would understand it. But Jeanty is definitely in play. He said that he would like a combination of Justin Fields and Jackson Dart. I'd be fine with that combination. I'll say this again. Shout out to my guy Dominique. We are on the Justin Fields bandwagon. We think he could still be a pretty good quarterback in his league in the right spot. Jackson Dart, I have as a second rounder. Again, some people have him as a first rounder. I take him in the second round. I'd be fine with that. Athletic quarterback who I think could work. You're just wondering, can his game translate from Ole Miss, which is a quarterback-friendly, non-pro scheme, to the pro level? And then DK Metcalf, you mentioned the compensation for it. Word is out now that he would cost a first and a third round pick. I would give up a first round pick if I'm on the back end of the first round. But the Raiders have pick 6, so I don't think they're in play for DK Metcalf at that asking price, because I'm not giving up pick number 6 for DK Metcalf. Absolutely not. But if you're on the back end of the first round, you may think about that. But unless that price range comes down, I don't see the Raiders paying that for a DK Metcalf. Though it would be nice to think about, because DK Metcalf is a pretty damn good receiver.
And we know how much Pete Carroll loves DK Metcalf. Trust me. So I'm sure he would love to have him, and I'm sure they will inquire. But as you said, I think it goes back to what you said earlier in the show. It's all about the comp. If it's too much, you just can't do it. No matter how much you like the player, you have to bide your time and make sure it all goes that way. So good stuff. All right. Well, thank you to everybody for calling in. And again, if you want to be a part of the show next week, all you got to do is give us a buzz. Got the number up there on the screen for those of you listening. It's 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Leave your name, where you're calling from. Don't forget your name. We've had some good calls, but we don't know who it is. So make sure you leave your name, where you're calling from, and then your comment or question. You can also text to 702-900-7869. We can take it by text. We didn't have any text this week, but we usually get a couple, and I'm happy to read those. If you don't want to call in, if you're shy with your voice, not a problem. So do that and be a part of the show. Also, don't forget, we also have a community up on x.com. If you go in there, you can request and we will approve you, and you can talk to Mo and I in that community as well. And we appreciate you joining up there. Don't forget to rate and review the show. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get the show. Mo, before we get out of here for the day, let everybody know what you got coming up this week.
So I have a Sports Not piece up already with my free agency predictions of who I think the Raiders are going to sign, who I think they're going to let go. And I also have a prediction for one trade that I believe is going to happen. That is up right now. It published on Wednesday. Other than that, I'm just going to wait to see what the Raiders are going to do as far as re-signings. I think there will be some more re-signings before free agency, or I should say the legal tampering period starts on Monday. But after that, you know what it is. I'm going to be reacting to these Raider moves on Bleacher Report Live Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I'll turn over to my partner, Rodney, who does Thursdays and Fridays. But tune into the Bleacher Report Live, because I'll have immediate reactions. I'll get your immediate reactions to what the Raiders do in free agency.
Absolutely. Don't forget to miss those. And we'll be back next Thursday. Talk a little bit about free agency, what's going on. We'll be a day ahead of the league new year. So happy new year. We won't be popping champagne or any of that stuff, but we will be talking football, and we'll find out what's the latest going on in Raider Nation, what's happening with the team, who the targets are, who might drop quickly for the Raiders. We'll see. Maybe it'll be a quarterback. Maybe it won't be. Only time will tell, but we'll be here to talk about it. So please do that. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Again, we are an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Don't forget to rate and review as well. We certainly appreciate that. But the audio side of it, even if you watch us on video mostly, go ahead and subscribe on the audio side. It helps us out significantly. We appreciate it. If you're watching us on video, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notifications bell so you know when we have a new video. Also, thumbs up is also good. And make comments. We love the comments in there. We love to talk to you inside, especially on YouTube. We get a lot of great comments. So do that, and we appreciate you being with us. Mo, my friend, I will see you next week, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more to talk about as we head into this free agency period.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right. For everybody here at Silver and Black today, including our producer, Mike Robier at Odyssey, for Moton, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. We'll talk to you guys next week.